AITA for doing the same thing to my sister-in-law that she does to my son. So background, I, 32F, have a brother, Dave, 35M, who's married to Sarah, 29F. They don't have children yet. I have a son who just turned 4 and a 3-month-old daughter with my husband, 39M. My husband and I live in Belgium most of the time, but we travel back to visit my family about once a month, in England. At home, we speak both English and French to our children. My husband is Belgian, and right now, my son is in this very sweet phase where he'll sometimes mix up the two languages and say a couple of words in English in a French sentence or vice versa. This has never posed a problem to us, and even the staff at his nursery have reassured us that it's very common and they tend to grow out of it once they start at school. My sister-in-law has decided that this is a problem, so when we're visiting my parents and she notices my son doing this, she'll correct him, but she does so really rudely, whereas my husband and I will just gently correct him. Anyway, we're visiting at the moment and she's now decided that instead of correcting him, she's just going to start ignoring him when he does this. I sort of noticed her doing it when we arrived, and I thought it was odd, but assumed maybe she was just stressed. Her job is quite intense, but it only really became an issue yesterday. My husband was talking to my dad outside and I was feeding my daughter in the other room, and I'd left Lewis with Sarah and Dave. When I came back downstairs, Lewis was crying, and I managed to understand that he'd tried to ask Sarah for a drink. He has a special cup he uses that he was holding, so it was obvious what he meant, but that she'd just ignored him. I asked her why, and she explained that she wasn't going to reply to him unless he said the sentence correctly, and that I shouldn't be ignoring my son's obvious speech issues. For context, it's not that she didn't know what he wanted. She told me that she understood exactly what he was asking for, but that she was deliberately refusing because he hadn't asked correctly. This really pissed me off, but luckily my husband came inside at that moment and pulled me away so we could calm down and settle Lewis. That night at the dinner table, Sarah asked me to pass her something, but she said it in bad English, shis English. I just mean that she asked for it in slang. Think, pass us the peas, will you? I had a bit of an epiphany, and I just decided to totally ignore her. She asked again, and I did the same thing. My brother asked why I was ignoring his wife, and I said that I'm not able to reply if she can't speak English correctly, and that it's wrong of him to ignore her obvious issues with grammar. Everyone's pretty pissed off with me, and I admit it was incredibly childish, but she was needlessly being a dickhead to my baby. Should I just apologize? Edit. Wow, this really blew up. Thanks for all the comments and support, and thanks for all the ESH/YTA messages too. I'm not going to apologize to her, because, to be quite frank, I think she deserved it, but I will have a conversation with her and my brother before we leave to try and explain that, for one thing, it's completely normal, and, more importantly, that if she keeps correcting or ignoring my son, I'll be severely limiting their contact. Although I doubt if I'll ever leave him alone in a room with her again anyway. To answer a few of the most common questions, when I said everyone was mad at me, I meant my brother, his wife and my parents, although, my parents don't agree with what Sarah's doing either. They're more trying to keep the peace. My husband is entirely on my side, and when he realized what Sarah had done to Lewis, he only saw the aftermath. He wanted to cut short the trip. Sarah, and the rest of my family, only speak English, which I suppose goes some way towards explaining why she doesn't understand it. I do think it's a monolingual reaction because we've never experienced anything similar in Belgium. One final thing, lots of questions about why we're in the UK so often. My husband has to be in London for his job about once a month/once every 6 weeks, so we tag along. I freelance, and a few of my clients are UK-based, so it's a good opportunity for me to fit in a few meetings too. It also gives us the chance to bring Lewis and Misha over to see my parents before Lewis starts school, and we have to cut down on the visits. Now let's look at the comments. NTA. You completely passive-aggressively defended your kid against a childish adult. Was it petty? Yes. Was it deserved? Hell yes. honestly, I wouldn't term this passive-aggressive or revenge, simply because first, the SAL is the one who set the standard for how to react if something is grammatically incorrect, and two, because essentially we're talking about education, and one of the best ways to teach is to demonstrate. If the SAL wants to take this as petty, that will be up to her, but it should be explained that if an adult finds the demonstrated behavior frustrating, imagine how it is to a child, whose language is still developing. The uncle, brother, also needs to think about the mental health of his nephew, and if he is going to be okay with any future children he is being moved to tears by his wife's intolerance and ignorance. I live in a part of Canada where English and French are spoken equally. I work with grown adults who use what we call Franglish, which is basically switching between the languages mid-sentence constantly. It's a totally common way of speaking, and it's very easy to understand even if you are more familiar with one language than the other. If this is how Sarah treats a 4-year-old who is still developing his language skills, she's damn near have a heart attack if she visited my town. NTA. Sarah needs to get off her high horse. Yeah, I know I'd have been a lot ruder if someone watched my kid cry about wanting a drink and decided that was the right time to enforce their expectations on him about his grammar. OP may have been petty, but her SAL was cruel. 100% agree here, you are so anti-OP. This is the level of petty I love seeing and the best hill to die on. Do not apologize to that childish woman ever. I'd even go as far as ignoring her every time she doesn't say things correctly.